Good to have you with us on this Friday edition. Ed Schultz News and Commentary from Washington, D.C. Thanks for the view. Thanks for the download. WeGotEd.com, RawStory.com, RingOfFireRadio.com, and, of course, the news with Ed Schultz. That would be me on RT America, Monday through Thursday at 8 o'clock. All right, a couple things. You know how it is. You see some things on TV that make your head explode. You know, I'm watching this town hall last night on MSNBC. First they got Bernie on, and then they have Hillary on. And you see the narratives going back and forth as the candidates are jockeying. You know, Mrs. Clinton, I think you need to be fair about Bernie Sanders and how he has caucused with the Democrats. This idea that he was never a Democrat is outrageous. He's an independent because he's left of the Democrats. And I think the question for Hillary Clinton right now would be, Secretary Clinton, do you think that Bernie Sanders is too conservative for the Democrats? Do you think that he's too close to the Republicans? Or would you characterize his position as being left of center? That is why Bernie Sanders is an independent. And there's nothing wrong with being an independent. And what people are failing to realize is that he's never been to a meeting with Republicans. There's only been a couple of independents in the Senate, and Bernie's one of them, and he has always caucused with the Democrats. And he has been a faithful voter, vote after vote after vote, against the conservative wing of this country. And so And last night when Hillary's making the case that, well, you know, he wasn't even a Democrat until he started running for president, you have to be dumber than a box of rocks and almost insulted to accept that as any kind of concrete logic about Bernie Sanders. He is an independent because for years he has pounded the table about universal health care. For years, he has gone after the corporations that have screwed the working folks in this country. For years, he has walked the picket lines. He walked picket lines in Iowa with union folk who were striking. He's the guy who has always been there for minimum wage. Now, I want to talk to, if you're a person of color, respectfully. And I feel like I can take a little bit of license to do this because I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia. You're looking at, if you're viewing us or listening to us, I'm a product of forced busing for racial equality. I went to a black high school. Okay? I think I've had a pretty good education about the social struggles in this country for African Americans and people of color. This idea that Bernie wasn't there. Let me ask a question. If you're a person of color, you may know what it's like to get arrested with the way the cops have been lately and the way the kids in this country, young black youth in this country have been treated. You probably know someone who's been arrested and was probably roughed around and maybe got a raw deal and it wasn't the right thing. There's a lot of that going around. Well, Bernie Sanders was arrested. And for this narrative that he hasn't done anything for civil rights is outrageous. He was on the front lines in Chicago fighting for civil rights, being arrested back in the 60s. Now, you know, we all got arrested in the 70s. Everybody's starting to straighten out in the 80s, I guess. I don't know. These are, and so when I talk about my head exploding, when I watch this stuff, I can't be on the air long enough to set the record straight. Now, there's something else I want to set the record straight. The conservative media seems to be having a little bit of fun with me right now. Tucker Carlson, that piece of shit, and that's exactly what he is. And I won't lose any sponsors because I dubbed that conservative nitwit that. He's got this website, The Daily Caller. And then there's the Washington Beacon. And then, of course, there's Dan Abrams, who's also a piece of shit, from Mediaite. They're running this story that Ed Schultz shut down a super PAC and only raised $25. Let me explain again. The super PAC is not shut down. So they're not factually correct. So when Donald Trump says that the media is dishonest, I'm sitting at home watching this saying, you know, he's right. Tucker Carlson's dishonest. And so is Dan Abrams, and so are these jokers over at the Washington Beacon that want to write that Ed Schultz shut down a super PAC. You could call Washington, the Dirksen Law Firm, and find out about Americans for a Strong Middle Class, although I'm not a part of it. I don't know how much money has been raised. When I started to get involved with the super PAC, I started negotiations with RT America. Did anybody call me on that from any of these websites? No, they don't call me. They just write shit. That's what they do. They're all about being totally derogative and totally nasty and misinform their ignorant base. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about Nevada. We're going to talk about the super delegates, and we're going to talk about an endorsement in South Carolina that curiously happened earlier than expected. Stay with us. This is Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave. Hey, folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com. www.biogreenclean and order today. It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit. Is very interesting. They're looking for mojo. There's no question about it. At an event in Reno last weekend, Bernie Sanders wondered out loud why that there were 25 former solar panel workers in front of him who lost their jobs. I mean, have you ever been to Nevada? It's pretty hot. A lot of sun happening out there, you know? He said that this should be a leading industry here. You should be leading America. You should be leading the world and encouraging people to move forward towards solar panels. But Nevada is not leading anything when it comes to solar power. Despite its abundant and mostly unobstructed sunlight, the state's solar industry was once thriving. In a December decision recently, a few months ago, by the Nevada Public Utility Commission, with the stroke of a pen, the three-person Republican-appointed commission hiked up fees for rooftop solar customers and slashed rebates, making it significantly more expensive for people to buy, install, maintain panels on their homes and businesses. The state's solar industry plummeted almost immediately. In the first week of January of this year, 2016, Solar City announced that it would leave Nevada and fire 550 workers. Shortly thereafter, Vivint Solar also said that it would leave the state, followed by residential solar company Sunrun. I mean, it was a domino effect. And it's these kinds of things that hurt American business and American jobs. And so we're down to the state level here, the Public Service Utilities Commission doing a decision like this. Obviously, they're probably trying to raise some revenue. But how much of a tax base have they lost? And how much of a liability have they created? And the manufacturing sector seems to take it on the chin a lot with the scenario that's played out like this. Scott Paul joins us. He's the president of Alliance for American Manufacturing. Scott, good to have you with us.
Ed, good to be with you today.
Is this a familiar story?
Yeah, this is called shooting oneself in one's foot. Nevada, it may drop this year, but last year had more solar jobs for other state in the country. So, and as you indicated, Ed, and you look at it, classic economic terms. Look, Nevada has a comparative advantage in sun. It's a good thing, and not only on the rooftops, but they also have 6 solar manufacturers there. Elon Musk, the high tech genius with Tesla, is opening up an enormous factory to make electric batteries powered by solar and wind power in Nevada. It's going to put 6,500 people to work eventually, hopefully. But it is unimaginable that a public commission of a state that has a comparative advantage in solar and that depends more on solar jobs per capita than any other state in the country would do something like this.
Well, the story reads here, how did a billionaire cause the problem? In a nutshell, the new solar fees were requested by NV Energy, the state's energy utility, which is owned by billionaire Warren Buffett. NV Energy argued that solar customers needed to be on equal footing with other sources like fossil fuels and should not be getting comparatively low fees and high incentives from the state. So this is energy and manufacturing coming together to create jobs now in a political struggle at the highest level to move forward. Why does America work against itself? It's mind-boggling to me, and we've seen this in other industries.
Yeah, we sure have, Ed. I was just going to say that, America perfected the first wave of both solar and wind power back in the 1970s when we realized our country needed an energy policy and didn't want to necessarily be dependent upon foreign oil. But we squandered that, and we squandered it, because of philosophical reasons, why you just said. We had special interests in billionaires that stepped in, and so as a result, who's doing solar now? Germany, which doesn't have a comparative advantage in sun, that's for sure. China, same deal, but they have massive government incentives for their industry. And what Nevada and some other states have been offering is an incredibly reasonable incentive to do something that is going to not only have environmental benefits, but is going to make our country more energy independent and less dependent on foreign oil. And it's like, this is Nevada's oil. I mean, Ed, this is Nevada's oil, so why they would want to do this, it's clearly out-of-state interests, it's clearly philosophical, and it's not in the interests of Nevada taxpayers, Nevada manufacturers, Nevada consumers, or Nevada's workers, because this will have an impact, I think, on the tax base and on its ability to be a solar manufacturing leader when it should be.
Yeah. One political angle here I want you to touch on. Isn't it interesting how Donald Trump on the Republican side has talked about currency manipulation, talked about China. He's almost reading out of the playbook of the Democrats, being concerned about trade agreements and bringing jobs back, which I think is positive. Maybe it'll bring some other Republicans so there could be some bipartisan agreement when it comes to what we have to do for the manufacturing sector in this country and how we can't continue to lose different facets of our economy to overseas cheaper employment. What do you make of Trump? He's touched on some populist things that I know that folks that roll up their sleeves to go to work every day are kind of paying attention to. Your thoughts?
And you're absolutely right. And he talks about China and trade policy in every speech that he gives, every speech without exception. And it's clearly a conversation that people are eager for. And when you look at the polls, it's Republicans, it's independents, and even some of those kind of Reagan Democrats that you and I know, right? And they want Washington to be focused on this issue. And look, Bernie Sanders talks about trade agreements. He's opposed to TPP. I think, Hillary Clinton, I think her, President Bill Clinton's record on this really has a profound effect on her ability to have some credibility about this. And then most of the other Republican candidates are kind of out to lunch on this. But this is clearly a conversation that America wants to have. We're feeling the hollowing out of the middle class. We're seeing the rising inequality, even even though the unemployment rate is ticking down, the anxiety continues to be pretty high because people are looking at job opportunities out there, especially for people who don't have a college education, and say, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
All their jobs are going to China. So I hope this will encourage the other candidates to talk about China policy and trade in an incredibly meaningful way as we move ahead, Ed.
Scott Paul, always a pleasure. Good to visit. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ed.
President, Alliance for American Manufacturing, Scott Paul with us. When we come back, John Nichols, Washington Correspondent of the Nation, breaking down Nevada. What's it going to come down to? That's next.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
What if there's a good turnout? Let's go to John Nichols, Washington Correspondent of the Nation. Johnny, good to have you with us.
It is a sheer pleasure, my brother.
What are you looking at here? We got Bernie Sanders is now ahead in one national poll.
Yeah.
First time that's happened. Clearly, it's going to be a photo finish in Nevada. What's the difference between winning and losing?
Big difference, because our media doesn't know how to cover politics, by and large. And so, as a result, if you get like 4 millionth of one vote more, the headline is this candidate won or that candidate won. That's what happened in Iowa, right?
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately,
After they flip the coin, but yeah.
right, yeah. Unfortunately, that's what happens, right? And so, winning matters. We shouldn't, dance around it. A deeper, smarter analysis will tell you that, barely a few weeks ago, Bernie Sanders was, struggling to get noted in Nevada, and he appears to have closed the gap to, as you suggest, a photo finish. So, I mean, the reality of what Sanders has done is quite remarkable. The media reporting on it, by and large, will miss some of that. So, if Hillary Clinton wins there, she's going to register a win, and then if she wins in South Carolina, that's going to be very, very beneficial to her.
No doubt. Especially with the super delegates, it's going to really reinforce what they have done. She's got like almost 500 of them so far, and Bernie's got like 55, but one of them, I understand, is from Nevada, correct?
I believe so, yeah. And so, I mean, this is the thing about Nevada that people have to be really careful about, and I've covered these a few times. The Nevada caucuses have generally a pretty low turnout. Even if it's a big boost in turnout for them,
Yeah.
it's still small compared to other places. And where they vote and how they vote is quirky. And so I think polling is very, very hard. All you can get is a sense of where it's headed. So I don't think we'll know until it comes in. And it could go, I think, either way. What I do think is significant is that there'll be, we presume, some exit polling and a lot of other information that comes out there. If Bernie Sanders has cracked the Latino vote, if he has begun to get a significant Latino vote there, if he wins the labor vote, the unionized vote, or cuts even there, those are very significant numbers. So as we look tomorrow, or as we look in the weekend to all this, we shouldn't just look at that top line, no matter what it is, win or loss, for Sanders or for Clinton. We should look at some of those internal measures, because if Sanders does win this state, and he wins because he really got a notable amount of Latino votes, and if he did very, very well among the union vote, that's an indicator for a lot of future primaries.
This is going to be really interesting because, and school me up here, John, are there super delegates that back off once they see the popular vote?
Absolutely.
I keep remembering what happened with Jimmy Carter and Ted Kennedy back in, I think, 1980.
Yeah, well, that one went back and forth, right? First everybody thought Kennedy was going to do good, then Carter took off, Kennedy seemed to be out of it, and then Kennedy kind of made a comeback. And what we know is this: a superdelegate can do what a superdelegate wants to do. And so that's a superdelegate could declare today they're going to vote for somebody. that delegate could walk onto the floor of the Democratic National Convention, vote for whoever that delegate wanted to vote for. All of these superdelegates, to give you an example, just a totally outside-the-box example. Let's say this race blows up in some way we can't even imagine right now, Ed. And everybody decides, well, we really think Joe Biden should run. All of the superdelegates could shift to Joe Biden tomorrow. And nothing would stop them from doing that. There's no rule against it.
Yeah.
And so the key on the superdelegates is personal relationships. And one of the reasons that Hillary Clinton has such an advantage there is that she has been a party builder. She's been very, very involved in this for a long time. She has a lot of personal relationships with these people. Whereas Bernie Sanders, his relationships with the superdelegates they basically come through connections where maybe an activist has become a superdelegate, or a few members of Congress, things like that. So his relationship is different, and that's one of the reasons Clinton has such an advantage. It's also one of the reasons why the superdelegate thing is so problematic, because, in politics, you should always be a little bit careful about letting personal relationships, decide where you're going to go.
But John, this is the possibility of personal relationships clouding what the people want.
Yeah.
And now you got Alan Grayson down there in Florida, congressman, who wants to run for Senate, and he's had his battles with Harry Reid, no doubt about that. But the fact of the matter is, he's asking the American people, what do you want me to do with my vote? I mean, isn't that how it's supposed to work?
Well, look, if it was left to me, I'd get rid of the superdelegates. I just don't see the value of it.
Yeah.
I didn't see the value of it in 2008.
But it's not a democratic process.
No, what it is when the process was reformed to become dramatically more small d democratic, and really it is a pretty decent process in most places where you get a baseline percentage of the votes, you're going to get delegates. When it was reformed, there's frankly a lot of old-time Powells who were uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
They didn't want the people to take over.
Yeah.
and so I find it problematic, not because these folks aren't good players. This is the interesting thing. Here's the fascinating element of it. If the superdelegates weren't superdelegates, a lot of them would be at that convention anyway.
Yeah.
Because they'd be on somebody's slate. They'd go out and campaign. In fact, oddly enough, they might campaign harder knowing that they want their candidate to get some delegate slots so they can go to the convention.
It's all who's going to get greased when they run for office by the people at the head of the ticket. And it's party politics, and this is what Sanders has talked about, a political revolution, change the way we do things. The people's voices are going to have to mean something. And I think, John, I really believe there's way too much emphasis being placed on South Carolina. The Democrats aren't going to win South Carolina. They've lost it for 10 election cycles. Mm-hmm. The last time the Democrats won South Carolina was 1976. And so if this is the way it's going to go, who cares? You got to win in states that you're going to have to win to get the general election. So the Democrats, them winning the White House, no matter who it isn't going to pin on South Carolina. It's going to pin on Colorado, Nevada, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan. That's how I see it. And then, of course, you can throw in North Carolina or Virginia. But, the formula is what I just said. But you got to win Nevada, you got to win the western states, you got to win Colorado, and then you're home free. So, isn't all this media attention and scuttlebutt about a firewall in South Carolina? What is that? I don't get that.
Well, look, this is one of the great challenges we have with the whole process. Now, I will counter you a little bit here.
Please do.
I believe in that 50-state strategy. I want to see people trying for South Carolina. I think that's legit.
Yeah.
However, I think that when we talk about practical politics of the moment, what we recognize is that there are going to be battleground states, there are going to be some non-battleground states. The critical thing in all this, and I find this really troubling, there's this suggestion of, well, if you bring independents in, if you bring new people into the process, that's problematic, as regards to primaries. I don't think so. I think the point of a political party is to expand its numbers, right? To build it out. And to my mind, That's what we ought to be looking at. And there are states, I'll give you a very good example. In the last Republican debate, Trump talked a lot about Indiana. He talked a lot about the carrier plant closing in Indianapolis. He brought it up twice.
Yeah.
And why is he doing that? Because Trump, I genuinely believe Trump is thinking ahead.
Sure he is, no doubt. John Nichols, always great to visit. I see our old buddy Scott Walker's cut Planned Parenthood in Wisconsin. We'll talk about that the next time we get together. Good to visit, buddy.
Take care, my friend.
You bet.
Ryan Walker.
You bet. Nevada Caucus is tomorrow, Saturday, and of course we're back with you on Monday. This is Ed Schultz, News and Commentary. Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSafe team, and Communication Workers of America bring you this podcast. We're back tomorrow. Or, well, Monday. Yeah. Well, I work every day, but see you Monday.